Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut is out now, bringing a proper next-generation version of Sucker Punch's open-world samurai adventure to the PlayStation 5. This is pretty fascinating, as the game has already received a PS5 patch last year, which let it tap into the extra horsepower of the system. So you might be wondering what a proper PS5 version brings to the table. While it's still largely the same game, there's a number of improvements that makes Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut the definitive version. I'm going to be focusing this video on the PS5 specific improvements, not the Iki Island expansion, which is also available on the PS4. If you want to know more about that, check out Phil Hornshaw's review. Let's start with the resolution. The original game on PS4 Pro offered a resolution mode where it ran at a targeted 30 FPS at a checkerboarded 1800p, as well as a performance mode where it ran at a locked 30 FPS at 1080p. Pretty straightforward stuff, with a simple choice between picking a more stable frame rate or a cleaner image. As I mentioned before, Sucker Punch added a PS5 optimized patch, which allowed the game to take better advantage of that system. The game would then run at 60 FPS at 1800p checkerboarded while in resolution mode, essentially making the performance mode obsolete. But the game was still the PS4 version, meaning it couldn't tap into the full potential of the system the way a native PS5 version can. So what does the Director's Cut give you? According to Sony, if you select higher resolution mode, the game will run at a dynamic 4K at 60 FPS. Digital Foundry has confirmed the game does indeed run at a checkerboarded 3840 by 2160. So it's not native 4K, but it is really damn sharp and a noticeable improvement from the PS4 Pro version. Playing it this way also takes advantage of the higher resolution textures Sucker Punch was able to add to this version. And of course, it runs at a nearly flawless 60 FPS. The result is one of the most beautiful games you can play on your PlayStation 5 right now. But the game still does have a better frame rate option as well. Picking this puts the game to how the original version played with the PS5 patch, 1800p running at 60 FPS. But why even pick this mode, if the higher resolution also runs at 60 FPS? According to the devs, they actually considered leaving this option out, but because there is the potential for a few drop in frames to occur in higher resolution, they figured they'll leave in better frame rate for those that want the option of a locked frame rate. I will say that I never experienced any frame rate drops during my time playing on higher resolution, and if they do happen, they're so minor that you won't care. So you should 100% play this game on the higher resolution mode. Now let's talk about the power of the PS5's SSD. Loading times are fast, and I mean really, really fast. Watch me travel across the island here and load in almost instantly. This is on par with what we saw in Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is my benchmark for fast loading times. This increased speed also allows the devs to do something rather interesting. In the original game, a number of cutscenes were pre-rendered as a way to hide loading times, but now every cutscene is rendered in real time. This was done to help bring down overall file size, as pre-rendered video files are quite large. But it also allows for one of Director's Cut's most welcome features: proper Japanese lip sync. A point of contention for some players during the release of Ghost of Tsushima was the lack of lip sync while playing with Japanese audio.
息子を守るため戦で死んだのだ。無念はない。それがモノノフ。
Considering the game's setting and how playing it in Japanese is featured as a selling point when you start the game, this exclusion did hurt those looking to experience the game this way. Because the sizes of the pre-rendered cutscenes were so big, they could barely fit on the game disc, and didn't leave the space for alternate cutscenes with different lip sync. Now that the cutscenes are rendered in real time, this allows room for Sucker Punch to add in Japanese lip sync.
息子を守るため戦で死んだのだ。無念はない。それがモノノフ。
As somebody who played Ghost of Tsushima in Japanese, this is by far my favorite new addition. It's still not perfect in a few spots, but it's a massive improvement. Playing in Japanese, you don't find yourself distracted by the lip sync the way you might have been previously. In fact, we have a video comparing the two versions, which you can check out after this. However, there is an interesting quirk I noticed that is a direct result of switching over to real-time cutscenes. In the cutscene at the beginning of the game where Jin recovers his sword, there is a flashback to him as a young boy training. Notice the excellent match cut between older and younger Jin. However, on the PS5 version, the game instead cuts to black and then fades into the flashback. The framing of Jin is also slightly different. Curious about this change, I reached out to Sucker Punch, and was told that this is indeed a direct result of switching over to real-time cutscenes. The reason the original version was able to do that seamless match cut is because it was pre-rendered. While switching to real-time made cutting from these two completely different scenes possible thanks to the PS5's fast loading, the developers still needed to add a small transition to make it work. The cinematics team had to go through the game and tweak a few scenes as needed. While I prefer the look of that original match cut, I do think that Sucker Punch made the right call here, as the switch to real-time cutscenes gave us Japanese lip sync, something that I find more important. If anything, this is just one of those interesting examples of the kind of changes made to a game when adapting it to new hardware. The director's cut also gets expected PS5 features such as DualSense and 3D audio. The haptics ride that sweet spot of feeling good without being too much. There's the obvious stuff like the clashing of swords or tension of a bow, but there's also more subtle effects, like your horse running on a rocky path or feeling the wind blow past you. I hesitate to go so far as calling it game-changing, but I do think it adds a lot to the experience. You even get some sounds coming out of the controller during cutscenes, such as when Jin unsheaths his sword. Other notable changes include the much asked for lock-on feature, which you can turn on and off, as well as some alternate button styles, great for accessibility. However, these options are included in a free update that PS4 players will get to enjoy as well. Which brings up the question of if this is worth picking up if you've already played Ghost of Tsushima originally. The pricing of the PS5 upgrade is a bit confusing to wrap your head around. Buying the PS4 version of the director's cut doesn't come with any of the improvements we just mentioned, just the Iki Island expansion, and for that it will cost you $20 US. Meanwhile, the PS5 upgrade runs you $30, so you're paying an extra $10 for all of these improvements. And while I do think these improvements do make the game better, and it's worth checking out if you haven't already played Ghost of Tsushima, if you've already played it before, it's a bit of a tough sell. However, I leave it up to you to decide if it's worth it. A big selling point might be the Iki Island expansion, which, if you want to know more about, I'll remind you again to go check out Phil Hornshaw's review. Spoiler alert, he liked it. And if you liked this video, why not give it a thumbs up and sub to GameSpot for more coverage on all things video games. Thanks for watching.